The snow was falling so hard it erased the road behind me. I was lying on frozen ground at the bottom of a wide stone staircase, my body shaking uncontrollably, my arms wrapped around my newborn daughter. She was only 3 days old. Her cries were growing weaker by the second, swallowed by the wind and the storm. Just moments earlier, the front doors of a mansion had slammed shut above us. My husband's family had dragged me out of their house, down those stairs, and thrown us into the snow like garbage. They called me worthless. A mistake. They said people like me never belonged in their world. No coat. No phone. No car. Still bleeding from surgery. Barely conscious. Holding a baby who was turning dangerously quiet in my arms. I truly believed we were going to die there. My name is Kate Sullivan. And what the people who abandoned us in that snow did not know was this. For hours later, I would become the sole heir to a fortune they desperately needed to survive. For hours later, every ounce of power they thought they owned would quietly transfer into my hands. They thought they had erased me. They thought I was nothing. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. That night was not the end of my life. It was the beginning of their collapse. This is not a story about revenge fueled by rage. It is a story about patience, truth, and consequences. If you have ever been dismissed, humiliated, or treated as disposable, stay with me. Because the woman they left bleeding in the snow is not the woman who walked back into their world. Before the snow, before the fear, I was just Kate Sullivan. No famous last name. No safety net. No powerful family waiting in the background. I grew up in a working-class town where success was measured by effort, not status. My mother worked long shifts at a clinic. My father repaired machines until his back gave out. We didn't have much, but we had rules. Show up. Tell the truth. Never look down on people. I carried those rules into adulthood. I paid my way through school. I worked while studying. I learned how to live carefully and responsibly. I never expected luxury, only stability, respect, and a family of my own. That was when I met Michael Reeves. Michael was charming in the way money often is. Confident, polished, assured. When he said he loved me, I believed him. When he asked me to marry him, I thought I had been chosen. What I didn't understand was that I wasn't marrying just a man. I was marrying his world. A world built on appearances, control, and silent hierarchies. A world where last names mattered more than character. And silence was expected from people like me. From the beginning I felt it. The pauses when I spoke. The way his mother studied my clothes. The questions about my background. Framed as curiosity, sharpened with judgment. I told myself it was nerves. I told myself love required patience. I didn't realize how dangerous it is to mistake tolerance for kindness in a family that sees weakness as permission. Marriage didn't soften that house. It exposed it. Patricia Reeves ran the home with calm authority. Nothing about her was gentle. Control to her was respect. Howard Reeves treated me like an employee. Questions were commands. Opinions were corrections. Lauren Reeves watched everything. She smiled in public and mocked me in private. She recorded my mistakes. My exhaustion. My discomfort. She turned my pain into entertainment. And Michael stood in the middle. He wasn't cruel loudly. He was cruel silently. When his mother corrected me, he looked away. When his father dismissed me, he changed the subject. When his sister laughed, he pretended not to hear. Money became another weapon. Joint accounts became his. Spending required permission. Questions were labeled ingratitude. I learned which rooms I was allowed to enter. When to speak. When silence was safer. I kept shrinking, believing compromise would earn peace. It never does when only one person bends. By the time I became pregnant, I was already a shadow, present, useful, and easily ignored. They mistook my restraint for weakness. They were very wrong. The hospital should have been the safest place in my life. I had just undergone emergency surgery. My body was weak. My daughter lay beside me, fragile and new. Michael never came. Late that night, a nurse showed me her phone. Michael smiling, arm around another woman. Caption about honesty. New beginnings. Then the door opened. Patricia. Howard. Lauren already filming. Michael wasn't with them. They told me I was unstable. That motherhood was too much for someone like me. That my daughter would be safer with them. They placed documents in front of me. Lies dressed as concern. Claims I had never made. Decisions I had never agreed to. I was medicated. Terrified. I signed. Because I was afraid that if I didn't, I'd lose my child forever. That was the moment I understood. They didn't want peace. They wanted control. The day everything finally broke, I returned to collect my things. I wanted dignity. They didn't allow it. They took my baby from my arms. I screamed. Hands dragged me forward. The doors opened. Cold rushed in. They pushed me down the stone steps. Again. And again. I landed at the bottom in the snow, bleeding, stunned. My baby was placed against my chest. Patricia looked down and said this was where people like me belonged. The doors closed. The storm didn't. I lay there, shaking, holding my child, convinced we were going to die. Then headlights cut through the snow. A man knelt beside me and said, calmly, "Kate Sullivan. We've been looking for you." His name was Daniel Foster. For hours earlier, my grandfather had died. A man I'd never met. A man who left everything to me. The next 8 weeks weren't about revenge. They were about survival, healing, learning, listening. I learned how power actually works, quietly, deliberately, patiently. I didn't rush. I didn't react. I waited. And when the Reeves family walked into that boardroom thinking they still had leverage, they didn't recognize the woman at the head of the table. I introduced myself calmly. Kate Sullivan. Majority shareholder. Acting chair. This meeting was never about a deal. It was about accountability. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I let the truth do what truth always does when it's no longer silenced. When I stood to leave, no one followed. Justice doesn't rush. It waits. Then it arrives without asking permission. Life didn't become perfect. It became quiet. My daughter came home. I rebuilt. Not to prove anything, but to create stability where there had once been fear. And I learned something important. Real power isn't loud. It doesn't need cruelty. It doesn't need revenge. Real power is surviving without becoming what tried to destroy you. If you're listening to this while doubting your worth, hear this clearly. You are not weak for enduring. You are not foolish for hoping. And you are not nothing just because someone treated you that way. Sometimes the moment that breaks you is the moment everything quietly begins to change.